Decorating Pages is a podcast dedicated to taking you behind the scenes of the designs of your favorite TV shows and films. Each episode, I'll be sharing design stories from some of Hollywood's most famous sets. Interviews from set decorators, production designers, directors, and actors about creating the look of TV and film, about their design inspirations, and stories that take sets from page to screen. Hello, and welcome to Decorating Pages. I'm your host, Kim Wanup. Well, I hope you're kicking off your summer vaxxed and mask-free. we soon will be mask-free here in California in 2 weeks from now. Woohoo! I think I'm still going to wear my mask here and there. But I think for production-wise, we're still wearing masks and face masks when actors are around. I'm still being tested 3 times a week, and then in a zone A, and the zone B is once a week still. So haven't really lightened up anything in my work world. So can't really throw those masks away just yet, which, I don't know, I kind of like not having a cold for, a year. So they do work. I believe they work. And it's half mental. If you believe something works, it helps you out. So I hope you had a great weekend kicking off the summer. When I always think about Memorial Holiday, I grew up in my formative years, let's say in South Jersey, and Memorial Day to Labor Day is the summer. We only had school for 2 more weeks. And it really just sort of, to me, is just oh, summer's here. But in Los Angeles, it's gray May, it's June gloom, and it's cold, and it's overcast. And now that I moved down to more of a beachy area, it's really cold, which I like. But it doesn't really feel like summer. Plus, I don't have off anymore. Oh, I don't have off at all because I don't know when or where my show is ending, so I don't know when this show is going to be over, so pretty much think I'm going to be working all summer, which kind of is a bummer. But I'm working. I can't complain. I'm working. We did our version of the White House West Wing, the residence, this morning, and I was taking a couple pictures before everybody walked in, and thinking one of the best parts of the job is those few minutes just before the crew comes in, and it's a little bit quiet, and you're waiting for people to come in to see it, and it's not yours anymore. Once the crew takes over, it's theirs. I only had it for so long between construction and lighting and paint that it's sort of set dressing little baby in there. And then you just sort of hand it over and you're be gentle and don't ruin it. And I stayed up nights thinking about that fabric and that pillow and those tassels. And okay, someone threw it on the floor. Okay, we had to move that couch. Okay, I got to get out of here. That's why it gives me anxiety to stay in the room and see, when things are moved for camera. But that's how it gets shot, so I can't say anything. I think one of the other things, too, with summer is always that Memorial Day was always this huge, blockbuster weekend. And, don't get me wrong, I want to see Cruella, but this isn't a big blockbuster. They're not releasing anything to make me feel like it's summer. I always think of Batman or, Jurassic Park or things like that came out and started your summer. So, it's kind of a bummer. I'm going to watch Cruella. I'll definitely get into it. I want to go to the movies. I probably won't yet, but I'm going to rent it. I think the design looks fabulous. I really do. It just looks intriguing to me. I'll check it out. What's one up watching? You and I, because I know you've got good taste. You're listening to this podcast. You finished up Mayor of Easttown also, and what a great ending. I really liked it. I liked all of it. I loved all of it, and kudos to the production designer Keith Cunningham and set decorator Edward McLaughlin. Nailed it. You picked phenomenal locations to sell Delco, and all my cousins who live in Delco really happy with it, so thanks. I love all these interviews with Kate Winslet talking about Wawa. I love Wawa. I've always wanted to bring Wawa to the West, but it's not happening. But I just think a great story, and there's not much else on. So I think everybody was like, just so thirsty for it. I'm watching Hacks, which they're doing like 2 at a time. That's on HBO Max. I think it's funny and it's good. And Jean Smart, also in Mayor of Easttown. Such a range and so funny, and I like it. And then I'm picking up that 3rd season of the Kaminsky Method. I just started that last night. I did like 2 episodes, I think. I really am watching it for the Kathleen Turner. I don't know. I'm just amazed, and like I can't take my eyes off her when she's on screen. Just I can't believe that that's her. But the show is the show. It just sort of makes you laugh, or it's okay to have on. I don't think it's anything great, but I was going to credit the designers, but there's a lot on there on IMDb, and I don't know what's going on. So, I like it. And I always have my Housewives, which I might, for any of you Housewives fans, thinking of having a Housewives episode talking about the design of their houses and the reunions, because, and I always hate to like say who's going to be on upcoming episodes, because everybody's schedules change and you never know, and then it doesn't happen. I feel like every time I announce something, then it doesn't happen. But I'm pretty sure that one's going to happen. So that's probably going to come up in July after these Emmy interviews that I have to consider. Some Emmy contenders. So let's get to it. On this episode, I speak with production designer Kalina Ivanov about her design of the 50s noir series Lovecraft Country. Studying theater in NYU, it led Kalina to storyboarding for such films as Silence of the Lambs, wow, Quiz Show, Sleepers, and like 20 other great films. Kalina, she then transitioned to production designing and has a huge range, is what I noticed in her resume, from comedies of like The Best Man and Uptown Girls to that Long Shot with Charlize Theron. I really like that movie. I thought it was fun. I thought it was a great premise. And then I heard Seth Rogen talking about it on Stern, and he was like, I just wrote it so I can make out with a pretty girl. So I like that. I think that's funny. Anyway, Kalina also did Smash. Remember that show? It was so good on NBC. It was a lot. There was like all these dance numbers and the choreography, and it was so good. It was like a play. It was like a TV show about a play about Marilyn Monroe. I'm in. I'm always in. Kalina has done dramas like Rabbit Hole, The Conspirator, which I just recently watched again by Robert Redford. Phenomenal. The series Kings, and then that Netflix series 7 Seconds, which I didn't quite watch when it was on, and now I just watched it because I was going to talk to her, and that's pretty good if anybody needs a show. 7 Seconds on Netflix. It's by the creator of The Killing. That's a good one. Kalina also has an Emmy for her production design of HBO's Grey Gardens, which, Grey Gardens. Grey Gardens is such a phenomenal story. And then to be able to design that world of these women is just, you'll see, we get into it. But we mostly talk about Lovecraft Country, which I started it when it came out in, I think, August. I did 1 episode and I was like, I don't know. I'm going to get into this. And then life happens. I went back to work and here I am. So I just watched the whole thing in the last week. and it's gorgeous. There's so many sets. You will be astonished how many sets are in each episode. There aren't really any perm sets. It's crazy. And all of these different designs and different styles that she melds together to make this story. It's really beautiful. I have no idea what was going on in the series, but I couldn't get enough of the design. Kalina talks about her use of color tones that thread all of this pulp fiction together. It's really beautifully done. It's a period show set in the South in the 50s, but the story goes like into Korea. It goes into space. It goes in, I mean, they time travel. She had a lot to do. So it's all over the place, but every set lends to this story and just makes you want to see more. So I hope you enjoy.
You can see me now, right?
Yes, I see you.
Can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you.
Great. Hi, Kim.
Hi, how are you? Oh, what a beautiful painting back there.
Hey, that's mine.
Beautiful.
Yeah, that was from our last trip, right 2 weeks before the pandemic hit. We went to Morocco. Yeah, we came back literally February 16, and then the pandemic hit, like literally 2 weeks later. It was crazy. And so I ended up painting a lot of my memories and, just looking at the photos and from that, from Morocco.
Oh, well, at least you got that. At least you got that in there before we shut down.
Literally, we felt like, wow, we really wow, because at the end of every show, I take a trip. So this was right after, this was planned while we were still shooting Lovecraft Country. And so, anyway.
You must have needed.
And it was commissioned by my husband. He said, can you paint this one on this board so we can put it outside? And when I finished it, I said, I really like it. I think I'm going to change. I used to have a more abstract painting there. Mm-hmm. And I'm like, I think I like this. I like the colors. I like the vibrancy. It makes me happy during pandemic time.
I love it.
And then I thought, well, it's kind of like my color palette in life.
I mean, you should have taken a year off after Lovecraft Country.
Yeah. It's so funny. Yes, I agree. Yes.
So I started it when it came out and then was like, all right, I'm going to get back to this. And then, so I just watched all of it to speak to you. But I knew that it was this huge undertaking. I had watched the first 2 episodes in August, I think, when it came out. But I had no idea which way that story would go. And gotta be honest, I don't even know what was going on, but I was so enthralled with what I was seeing that I can't even describe how much prep you should have had.
I know, isn't it amazing? I know, it's that's the thing, is when people ask me and I have to recount well, when did you start? And I go I was hired on December 3rd 2018, and we started shooting in June 2019. But that's not enough. That's not because enough. They handed me the entire show. There was 500 pages when I was handed. I didn't do the pilot though. A friend of mine did it. But
there must have been over 500 sets. I mean, there were so many sets.
It was. I think it's. I've never counted them. Nisha says it's 162. I think it's 190. We have an argument about that because it really depends on how you count sets.
Yeah.
Sometimes.
Yeah. I mean, you could do that whole house as oh, there's a set, and you're like, no, there were 16 rooms inside. It's not one set.
And the exterior and the interior can be split sometimes, right? So it truly depends on how you count sets, but it doesn't matter. They were all of such scale and so vastly different and spanning every genre possible that I think the monumental task here was into finding a tone for everything, and that it didn't end up looking like a complete and utter one music video after the other. You know, disjointed, 10 other people did it. They needed to be some kind of a through line in the design, no matter where you were. So that was that was what was so complicated about it. And I just remember like how I was going back and forth between Atlanta and LA, scouting and doing concepting and scouting and concepting, trying to figure out the look and trying to get 11 big sets up for day one, you know, which, by the way, got misinterpreted in Gold Derby as I did 11 sets. It's like, no, but I think that I phrased it wrong too. This is kind of like why I don't like live interviews. No. It's better to put it in print, honestly.
Of course you're going to say I did 11 sets for the first day, but for anyone not knowing in our world, that doesn't mean just you. There's probably 100 people at least working on that one set. Like, it shouldn't be interpreted like that for people who know what's going on here.
Yeah. And it's also just, I mean, as I said, it was very complex, but I loved the project so much. I never felt, it was the most interesting thing. I never felt tired, or I was constantly thinking about it. Even on weekends, sometimes I would just go to the office on my own time, just not to be interrupted and not to have a lot of people. I think the hardest thing about television is the amount of meetings you have to do. Ugh. And I know
it kills you, and it kills your momentum.
Yes,
like, during your day.
Yeah, literally, I actually made graphics make me a sign that had a crocodile on it, and basically said like, "Do not interrupt" when the crocodile was on the door. It was basically "Do not interrupt," because I couldn't even draw a sketch. I often had to draw on Saturdays because that was the only time I could get. Like, and I can do it then in an hour or 2 hours. Otherwise, it's just like it took me 2 days because I worked 5 minutes here, 5 minutes there.
I think you could see how consuming this project would be, and breaking it down to shoot it, I just think was an enormous task. I mean, I was asking too, like, did you block shoot this? Did you do it by episode? Like, how did you guys shoot this?
Well, I wish we could have blocked, that was one of the first questions I asked. Are we going to have like 2 or 3 directors only, like Game of Thrones?
Right.
So that you can block shoot it, which is what this should have been. And they said, no, Misha wants 10 different directors. And I just looked at my producer and went like, boy, that's going to be a challenge. And I just said, like, you already have 500 really challenging pages. And now you're adding a revolving door of directors
coming in fresh and
tech scouts all the time. And I mean, I think that, like, it's so funny because now I've gone back to film, and I just finished a movie that George Clooney directed called The Tender Bar.
I know, it sounds so good.
And I read the script and I went like, oh, well, that's an episode and a half of Lovecraft Country.
Right.
That movie. I said, I think I can do this.
Yeah. Yeah.
And literally, I was like going, oh, literally.
TV is so much harder. I mean, majority of my work is TV, and the few films I've done, I'm like, yeah. Well, I shot the whole movie. Like, this is crazy. This is awesome. Like, it's just... I
know. And it's very interesting. And now I kind of like went like, I think I'm going to stick to film for a little bit. Because
you deserve a break.
I mean, it also, Lovecraft Country, on one hand, I want every show to be on that level. That's very hard to meet that material, or that material will get to you.
Right.
You know,
right.
That's a high bar.
Yeah.
And then I'm like, but I also want a better pacing.
Yeah. Time and money. We all want more time and money.
I can't sustain this kind of pacing day in, day out.
No.
Like at some point. And the thing with me is because I so need to be involved with the material, I need to connect to the material. And I so come from a very artistic and an intuitive place. It's so important for me to be engaged with the material. I cannot become automatic about the decisions.
Right.
Then I feel like the work is just not special. That's the whole thing. Is I want every project I do to be very special. To me, let's start with just me, and then to the audience.
For everyone to have that challenge on your team also, and not to get complacent or like, oh, just throw it in there. Correct. Oh, just do this. It is, exactly. It's really hard sometimes to stay that in there because of exhaustion, and like on something like this, when you're just, I don't know what shoots tomorrow, or I don't know, like I'm in that phase right now. We're just like, the schedule is non-existent. It's basically like looking at a call sheet and knowing what shoots the next 3 days. Like, I'm just exhausted by the like production side of it, not
Correct.
not my work.
Right.
I'm like deep dive like every night before I go to bed into like research and like everything
Sure.
in my world, but the production side of it, the meetings, like, oh my God, now I have a tech scout tomorrow. I was going to dress that. Like, it's so much that goes on that we have to deal with, that to actually produce these great sets like you have had is kind of miraculous. It's really, I don't know how we all get it done.
I think that with a couple of things happened. It was just the right combination of people, you know, and a lot of it has to do, it was very well produced. And that's a really key part of television. I find that like in television, what I have learned, that if I don't have the right line producer for the project.
Yes.
That makes or breaks the experience.
Yes.
And so I was very lucky to have a really, really great line producer and production manager. And I had worked with this line producer 20 years early on a movie, but he comes from very big movies. So he's got a very film point of view. So he also respects design. That's a key thing. For a show like that, if I am not supported as an artist or as a designer, then it becomes really, really challenging on top of everything. And so I find myself just literally surrounded by the right people. That was the key, I think. And that, I think, was what was so special about it and why it happened the way it happened, you know. And he hired the top people. They supported me. I had a very big team. You know, you can't do this with a small team. You can't nickel and dime me on things. Not that we didn't have budget challenges, but you cannot nickel and dime us. You know, we have to, like, we had certain things. I mean, there were definitely things like, I remember by the time we got to episode 7, which is the wildest episode, that's the one that, you know, Hippolyta goes to different planets and stuff like that. Oh my
God. Mind blown. I don't even know how you kept track of what is going on in that episode, because I watched it and I was like, I don't know what I just watched, but I like it. I don't know.
Well, it was such a great, I mean, it was so great. It's by far my favorite thing of the entire show. Out of like everything is a favorite. I mean, how about episode 6, Korea?
The Korea one. This is what I wanted to ask you. I mean, I don't want to cut you off, but I do.
No.
I did notice you were talking about you want the same tone and everything, like how you were able to keep even the same tone when you went to Korea. And a completely different architecture and completely different, you know, design elements. And you were still able to tie this whole story together with the design. It's just gorgeous, gorgeous work.
Well, I mean, let's dive into it. I mean, it all starts, I mean, let me just say a little bit about where I come from, you know, because I think it will inform the conversation. Because, I mean, obviously I'm not an American. I was born in Bulgaria. But my family and I left, actually, the truth of it is we escaped, like we illegally went into Greece and with the intent to come to America, to live in America. So we were refugees, lived in refugee hotels, refugee camps, etc., etc. And that was because Bulgaria was communist. So I was very determined to make a career for myself. What that career was going to be, I don't know, but I was going to work in theater. And so I went to design school. I went to NYU design school. So I was trained as a theater designer. And I was an undergraduate and a graduate program, which mercifully had no idea what that meant, by the way, because in Europe, it's all like university. So I thought it was the same thing. It turned out to be not the same thing. So I would have never have taken it upon myself to do it had I known. But anyway, it was, but I was trained as a theater designer. So what the beauty of that is, that as a theater designer, you're trained into conceptualizing a text. So you're very text oriented, you conceptualize, and you do different genres, because one project is a ballet, one teacher teaches opera, one teacher teaches Shakespeare, etc. So you do so many different genres, and you have to be nimble, and you're taught to design from Shakespeare to a musical to My Fair Lady. And that is the foundation. That's a great foundation for a designer.
Absolutely.
Now, looking at it in hindsight, I mean, hindsight is 2020, but it literally prepared me for a show like Lovecraft Country. And also, like, you know, obviously years of experience, but I don't think without so what comes down to is when I look at a text, even when it's 500 pages, even when each episode is a separate movie and a separate world, you start to think about how you're going to approach this through color conceptually from the beginning so that it doesn't become a mishmash. As I said, it doesn't become like a string of music videos done by different directors and different people.
Right.
It's because not a compilation.
It can too, with that input of different directors wanting to put their own spin on things, it can very easily twist a little bit and get lost. I've seen it happen.
Well, it was impossible in our situation because I think that Misha had such a specific vision. So much of it was in the script, like the music cues were in the script, that I don't think the directors had some freedom, but they really couldn't change the style or the vibe. And also, I was already designed and built by the time they walked in.
Right.
I mean,
there was really are.
They could add and they could ask for things, and there were some really lovely things that they asked for, and we could add to the design. But they couldn't fundamentally change neither the color palette nor the overall design because I was way ahead of everyone. I had to be in order to produce such large scale sets, sometimes for just one episode. There was very few recurring sets.
No.
So, that's the other thing that was so difficult about that project. So one of the things that I did with the color palette to ground the whole thing, to ground it so that it has a theme to it, was I gave the Black characters the most wonderful jewel tone colors, the most vibrant, deep, beautiful colors. I gave all the Black characters those colors, and it kind of went the same in the costumes. And I kept the darker, more grayer on the grayscale, deeper, more sinister colors for all the white people. So if you look at it, if you start analyzing it that way, you'll see that that's true. And how in many ways the white world is, you can look at it almost as more monochromatic. So it doesn't have this kind of pop of color the way the Black worlds did. And that was by design, and that was by choice. And that was to say something about my characters, the emotional lives, who I really loved and was behind, and what world, I was trying to make for them. And so when we get to Korea, one of the things is we also shot out of order, but that episode we all agreed we were going to shoot last in order to get the winter look, because the story really takes place in 3 months, because episode 8 has to be at Emmett Till, which is August 28th at his historical death. Right. So it's all very summer. You needed the summer, you needed the hot, you needed to create that look of sun, scorching sun, hot summer, hot, sweat and heat. And then we knew we wanted Korea to contrast. So that's kind of how you determine your palette from the beginning. And then I have a certain amount of colors or certain amount of color deck that I would use per show. So you try not to stray and not to use every single imaginable color under the sun, and that's how you control the look, and you get or you create and design the look, basically.
Yeah, I mean, one of the things, you are time traveling. You're already based, I believe, in the 50s. But then you have this white room that's so modern and the space room, which is incredible. You have this, I'd like to say, like this Gothic architecture for that beautiful mansion that they have. I mean, to incorporate all of these different looks, but to keep it cohesive was just gorgeous work. I mean, really. And the set decorating and everything and the light. I mean, the lighting I thought was really good. That's really so important. The lighting has to be on your side. So, a really great team.
He deserves all the credit. The main cinematographer was Rob McCullum, and I've worked with him before, and that helped a lot because we had a very successful relationship, and he's somebody who really respects design and really appreciates it, and is very collaborative and leans into design. So he understands what a good design can do for him, and I understand what good lighting can do for me. And there were a lot of discussions and a lot of collaboration there. And it was, and because they bring the cinematographer so late, for example, I had pitched Misha the idea that episode 2 takes place in candlelight. You know,
right.
So anytime I design, I also think about the lighting and the mood. And I kept telling her, that's our Barry Lyndon episode. Let's do it Barry Lyndon. We're supposed to do it because the lodge is a replica of 1795. And I just wanted to create, and it's a mythical village that's not even on the map. And it's, what is this? And people look like they're pilgrims, and it's like, what is this? And I really wanted to feel like, you stepped into a completely different century and a different time. And why am I here? Except for the lab, where because he's experimenting with energy and he's trying to create a whole new Garden of Eden energy, he is more like experimenting like Tesla with electricity. And that's where you see the electrical bulbs and the electricity and the orbs. I designed those orbs actually to be like Tesla-like. Versus like just a magician orb, Right. And so there was a lot of, I always think about lighting. Actually, that's one thing I've learned as a designer is that you really should think about lighting when you're designing your sets, because it will just help both of you.
Yeah, definitely.
We go hand in hand.
Yeah.
But I was really, really lucky that I had somebody I'd worked with before, which is a coincidence. And that relationship was very good.
Well, thank God.
Yeah.
It could go wrong.
But the whole show was like that. Everybody was so collaborative, and everybody from special effects to visual effects, everybody was just so collaborative and lovely to work with and on the same page and wanted to do the same thing and really respected me, because I was kind of I was leading the troops in a way, because I was so much ahead of everyone conceptually, and I had done a big presentation, 100-page presentation in March to HBO to greenlight us. So much of the look was already determined in 2.5 months, and kind of like people had to get on board, and everyone did, and we had no pettiness, no ego fights, none of that. Everybody worked towards the same goal. And everybody was just enchanted by the challenge that the show presented. And I also just think at the end of the day, your showrunner is so charismatic and has such vision, such strong vision, and so articulate about it. And yet she gives you so much freedom. I think that's the key. I mean, in television, that's your key. That's your director, basically.
Yeah, they have to know they hired a good person, and they have to let them go with it.
She did. Same for costumes, So it's a really, really collaborative. It's not just one person army. But I could not have succeeded had I not had such support from the crew, from every department head. I mean, special effects when we built the tank.
All that blood. You had so much blood on your set.
I mean, we built our own tank, for these tunnels, and then what an engineering kind of challenge to also figure out how they're going to walk into, how they're going to go from ankle deep water to knee deep water to chest deep water.
Yeah.
That took a little bit of figuring out. And again, having the right team around you, the right team of art directors, the right team of construction people, scenics, it's a key. It's a tribe. You carry an army, and the whole army needs to love the assignment.
It's movie. Anyway, it really is movie magic. Sometimes you think like, how did we do that, and how did we get it done in time? That's always that.
We did it, and the thing about it is, as I said, I never ever felt exhausted or like at that point of where you're just on autopilot. I never got on autopilot. I was engaged till the last day. Somebody asked me, were you like coasting in the last episode? I said, hardly, because that was career.
Yeah. You didn't even give a chance.
You can't coast in career. You can't, because you're supposed to find career in the water in the middle of Atlanta.
I know.
So you're digging ditches in the field across from the studio, Anyway, it was interesting. Yes.
Did you read the books to get
yes,
the inspiration?
I had actually read the book. I had read the book in 2017, which is why I chased this project.
Oh, wow.
And even my agent kept saying, why do you want to do this? Somebody else did the pilot. And I said, I don't think you understand. There's every episode is different, because that's how the book is.
Yeah.
The book takes, and so I was just like, no, And I said, and if I don't get it, I'm interviewing for season 2. Don't worry about it. I was I wanted to,
I always think pilot schmilet. First of all, I hate doing pilots. It's so much work. It's so little time. And there's so many notes that come after it that episode 2 is, I mean, I know that they've based a look, but the meat of it and the real, like, okay, now we really have to build it, or now, we're not on location for this. Now it's a real thing a lot of times. That's where the challenges are. It's like the episode 2, when you inherit stuff, it's hard. But it's also fun. I mean, I'd rather do that than the pilot for me.
Well, technically, I would like to do the whole thing. In this particular case, the pilot wasn't completely finished. So the ending, Artem Lodge's mine, the beginning, the opening sequence is mine, in the middle, Montrose's apartment is mine. So there was so much crossover. So the pilot actually, and it wasn't, the designer is a friend of mine, and we talked about it and everything, and I absolutely preserved his work because it was beautiful, and it should have been preserved. It was gorgeous, but there was so much of the rest of what we did got added to the pilot that it's a total collaboration in a way, the pilot,
Right.
And I think they even credit me. I didn't even ask for it. Somebody did it. I didn't ask for it. I just don't really care.
Which episode are you submitting? I don't know which.
So for the Emmys, well, I always submit 7 if it's only 1, but I think that I submitted 3 episodes. So I think I submitted 2, 4, and 7.
Okay. I mean, every one of them is submittable. It's not like you got a weak link there.
Exactly. Well, 7 is like, 7 shows such a range that it's like, I don't know how do you argue with 7, right? For the Art Directors Guild, I submitted 2, 6, and 7. So for the Emmys, I think that's why I went back and went like, well, that didn't work. Let me try 2, 4, and 7.
That Art Directors Guild is elusive. They're elusive.
Well, I mean, I don't. I've already won it once. I don't really. I think that it's such a competitive category.
Yeah.
I'm not sure how you pick between my show, Mandalorian, Westworld, Perry Mason. I mean, how does Perry Mason fit with everything else?
That the categorization of period versus fantasy and everything. It's very.
Need to split them. They need to split them. It needs to be period. It needs to be fantasy, and then etc. And then I was delighted that I got nominated. That's great. If I get nominated for an Emmy, that would be great. I don't know. It's incredibly competitive because now you're combining actually in the Emmys 10 of the ADG into 5. You got to whittle it down to 5.
Yeah.
And one of those is Queen's Gambit, and that's going to win. So it's like,
But I agree with you because I'm on a show right now and it's period, and I'm talking with the designer and I go, wait a minute. We're period against the Crown. I'm out. We're out. Like it's not gonna we'd be lucky to get nominated. It's not like
the Crown was the last one, and I actually thought I was going to lose to the Crown. I was surprised.
I
was surprised because I thought the Crown was going to win. That's it. That was I could never think the 5th one, and that's the one I was saying. Well, the Crown's won every single award.
I know. It's like when Mad Men was around.
But they gave it to Mandalorian, which is fine. There's no. I don't really.
Don't get me started on Mandalorian because they put it in half hour in the Emmys last year, and which is ridiculous to me. And because it's over 45 minutes long each episode, I could go on for an hour about that.
In general, I think it's best to divorce yourself from the whole awards thing. I just feel like it's healthier if one can just for me, it's like, look.
But we're not designing for the award. There's never. That's
exactly what I was going to say. Do you think that I, for a moment, think, oh my God, I'm going to get nominated when I'm designing?
You can't. No.
Because you don't know. Because twice in my career, there have been things I've been associated with that went to the Oscars that no one ever foresaw and no one ever thought about it. One is when I storyboarded Silence of the Lambs. No one ever thought we were going to the Oscars for that movie, let alone win 5 of them. Yeah. And the other one is Little Miss Sunshine.
Yeah.
No one ever thought we were going to the Oscars. And at that time, it was only 5 movies. It wasn't even 10.
It wasn't even 10.
It wasn't him, and we were a very strong contender, by the way, to win.
Oh my God, yeah, Little Miss Sunshine was like the darling.
Exactly. So for me, I've kind of learned: do you work as if it's your last project? Do you work like this is, or as if it's like you put your heart in it, and as if it's going to go to the Oscars, even if it doesn't. It doesn't
the Oscars
matter.
In
it
your
doesn't
head.
Matter. It doesn't matter because you're not doing it for that. You're doing it for your own personal growth as an artist.
And I think you won for Grey Gardens. You won the Emmy for Grey Gardens.
Yes.
And here's the thing. I won an Emmy for Veep, and we went into the next season, and I thought,
which one, I'm sorry?
For Veep.
For which one?
Veep.
Oh, for Veep. Okay. Yes.
And so I really thought, like, well, cha-ching. I'm definitely gonna get a bump. I'm definitely gonna get something. Nah.
Right? No.
Nah. Or like, you get more offer, you get more that. No, it doesn't create for the creatives, the Emmys and everything. It's got to be your inner own achievement, and it's awesome. It's a great, your peers have voted that, but it's not. You're not gonna, it's not a payday. It's not like an actor or something. It's not. You're not gonna happen.
Yeah, I know. I mean, it's so interesting. I also think like. There are designers, and then there's popularity designers, and that's a very fine line and very different. And some people, I was surprised that Devs wasn't even submitted, for example. I mean, that was an amazing show, there are people who choose not to submit and don't want to get into that at all. And that's why that's not important to me at all. That's not what drives me, never has driven me. It doesn't matter. It's not important. It's really not important at all. What's really important is, for me, is to find to be true to the characters and to the story, and to be true to the genre or multiple genres, to whatever you're doing. And in that sense, I want to be like a chameleon. And that's why I've always I've done every genre, and I've very much worked very hard to go from project to project and do different genres so that I don't get stuck only in comedies. Because after Little Miss Sunshine, you get offered every comedy road movie. You literally get as if that is the only thing you can do. And so you don't do that. You do something completely different. And I remember after I did a big studio movie, I was telling the producer, I said, I'm going to do an art movie. And he goes, because there's no money in it? And I said, no, because that's where you get your awards, by the way.
Right. That's where you get
talking about awards, but I'm saying, but that's where you get your name recognition from.
Yeah.
Believe it or not.
I mean, so many smaller films I can think of that are referenced all the time when you're like, I want that, like that Little Miss Sunshine vibe. Like things are referenced like that, and I'm sure you can attribute to this. When you were designing that film, you weren't thinking that, like, oh, I'm gonna like key in on this road trip family movie vernacular of like, you shot it in Albuquerque, right? But I don't know if it was based in Albuquerque, but yeah.
There's a very funny story about that. So it shot a little bit, second unit went to Albuquerque. It's shot entirely in LA. Oh. Now, the script and why I got roped into it from the East Coast was the script originally, the trip was Maryland to Florida. So it took place on the East Coast. So, however, the actors, Steve Carell, blah, 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 the directors, they all had kids and wanted to stay home in LA. So they decided they were going to do Maryland to Florida in LA. So they hired an East Coast designer who's going to give them the East Coast look. So I go out scouting, and after 3 days of scouting Pasadena, which is about the most, everybody assures me that's the East Coast look.
Because of the trees.
I just go, let me look at a map. And I just go, all right. I can figure this out. It should end in LA, because in the meantime, we go to see a real pageant in Anaheim, and stuff like that. So I see that there's a whole world of these pageants in Anaheim. So that's LA, boom. So they can end in Anaheim. And I'm just doing 800 miles, because that's what they have to get, 800 miles in 2 days. And I do just a circle of that. And I land in Albuquerque, and I go, oh, I see that. I can find that in LA. I can find Albuquerque in LA, So I went and pitched them the idea. I said, do you mind changing the story from Albuquerque to LA? I said, what's the importance? Maryland to Florida. It doesn't play any doesn't add to the story.
No.
The story is the van.
No.
The story is the van.
Yeah.
That's the story. And the road and a bunch of people in it. It's the family unit.
Yeah.
And everybody went, you're right. And I said, it will liberate us. We can actually look 360 degrees all the time. We don't have to worry about it. We don't have to be stuck in Pasadena on 2 blocks of buildings and trying to pretend that that's the East Coast. And because it's not even urban, I can do downtown LA from Manhattan, which is what I did in the Best Man. Not the Best Man, excuse me, the Maid of Honor. We did that. We shot New York in LA. Yeah, but that's downtown LA.
Yeah.
They were on the road. So anyway, and so that's kind of the story of how we ended up being from Albuquerque to LA.
I love hearing when the design logic is brought into like the writer or the producers, and then they're like, and it's like a real light bulb goes off, as if, how did no one think of this, or how was this not an option before? Like it's crazy to me. I've heard so many stories like that. I've heard so many stories of just the design logic lending more to the story and everything. It's so great.
Well, I think it has to do also with your fresh eyes. Everybody's so used to the script by then, and they've just accepted it as a truth, and they've gone down this road and they just can't think outside of it. And you coming in new, fresh looking, going, I don't know. Right. This seems crazy to me. There's palm trees everywhere.
Yeah, you're right.
I mean, we only have 7 million. It's not like, sure, if this is a big budget movie and something like that, and we can VFX everywhere and change palm trees, sure, no problem. But what? You don't have that kind of money. And we had so many locations. It was amazing, but it was such an interesting experience, and it was one of the best scripts I read. That's one thing I know is like, if the script is good, then you should do it, Yeah. And so anyway, that's the important thing. It's storytelling and story and character building.
And that must have been a quick, probably location scouting, shoot it, we're done. Like
6 weeks of prep, or 7 weeks, 6 or 7 weeks of prep, and 7 weeks of shooting. That was it. It was just like, yeah. And
I ran through it again. It's so good. It's so good.
It's a classic.
Toni Collette is so good in that movie. Oh my God. It's so good. And her room is fantastic. I'm just wondering, I'm sure it was written that it was that type of automobile, like an old clunker sort of family van that you could get into. But I know that that's always a discussion of what you can actually get and what is written.
Well, the one thing is, I can't remember if it was written as a V&W bus. I have to go back to the script and see if it was written, but I know that we wanted it to be yellow. And I know we spent a lot of time on the exact shade of yellow. And I know that one of the advantages of being in LA is that you have really proper picture car people there.
Yeah.
And one of them is is married to a friend of mine who's also a designer, who's got a huge picture car thing. So he went and did the 4 cars and 3.5 car. We had 4.5 to do it, because you are you have to cut, one has to have seats, one doesn't have seats, one has to be cut in the middle, blah, blah. There's so much shooting in that vehicle. You needed 4, and then we ended up with a half, so 4.5.
And there wasn't any green screening as far as I could see. No, it was all real driving.
All real.
God, that's crazy. That's awesome.
All on the road, all real. But that's why you needed 4.5 half car, so that you can do you can get all these shots. Yeah, great cinematographer, Tim Schurstedt, really nice guy. Yeah. You
you brought up great cinematographers, and I just rewatched The Conspirator. That to me is so hard because it's before electricity. And it's all candlelight or daylight, and
or gaslight.
I gaslight, and I'm sure your collaboration there had to be just like hand in hand, and just the design of it and where the lighting would be, and plus, it's period. It's the assassination of Abraham Lincoln and the trial of the conspirators with Robin Wright Penn, and such a really dark but like historical like history lesson that I never knew. And I mean, I saw it when
yeah.
it came out, but rewatching it, I was like, man, this was so sad. This was so
It's a very underrated movie. It's very good. Yes, it's based on the trial transcripts. So it's based on the true trial transcripts, and it's the first woman killed by the American government. And they wanted to make an example out of her. They were trying to catch her son. But they wanted to make an example out of her, but they ended up, she got hung, as you know. And I mean, we did it in Savannah, really good place to do a period movie. And also when you have Robert Redford as a director, everybody opens their home, their historical, pristine home to you.
Right.
And so in that sense, we were lucky because when you have a big name director like that people love, that's beloved, it's a lot easier to get those period locations, and we really needed that because we were only 25 million. And so, but it was really the right city for us because so much of the history is preserved. That's the key. I mean, to do that when you're doing 1865, and then Melissa Levander was my decorator. She actually, I met her in Little Miss Sunshine, and she's done, she also did Maid of Honor with me, and she just finished The Tender Bar, the George Clooney movie with me.
That's great to come back together.
Yeah, I try to take her everywhere that I can. So she had such a brilliant idea because one of the things that is so complicated to do on 1865 film, anything that's before the 1950s becomes complicated in the multiples.
Definitely.
How do you get multiple chairs that are exactly the same? How do you get multiple tables? And we had a big trial room with multiple chairs and multiple tables, etc. So what she did is she made a deal with Warner Brothers. It also happened to be, we were shooting in 2009. It happened to be a time where prop houses were closing. Where the business went down big time, bottomed out. And so she was able to make a deal with Warner Brothers and got for $1,000 a day, literally for $40,000 for each day of shooting, anything she can get her hands on. That meant
flat
rugs, draperies, lamps. But you know what Warner Brothers prop house is like.
Yeah.
It's unbelievable. It's like...
And back then, they had that style, which they don't have anymore. They don't have that abundance of what you guys got. They don't have it anymore, which is always a sin because, spacing and time, they have to remove our things. But having a flat deal at a prop house when you're on a low-budget movie is, like, essential. And it's the way it gets done. It's so...
Well, I don't think... I mean, she was absolutely the right person because I'm from the East Coast. We don't have that. A, we don't have a Warner Bros. Prop house, and B, you can't even make a deal like that because nobody can pay their rent. Things are more expensive in the East Coast because the prop houses have to pay their rents. And so it was when those trailers came in and it was like, paintings and lamps and we still made some custom-made paintings and custom-made things, and she still went to a lot of vintage stores and antique markets, but it's the multiples. It just kills you, and that's why you either have to build it or you have to do that. So she did an amazing job. I mean, and as that's why I'm doing only period movies now or projects, is because it's so much more challenging, and I'm up for a challenge. I just really, at this point in my career, I want a challenge. I want people to challenge me.
You know what the challenge is? The 90s. The 90s is hard.
Really?
Yes, because the design was so all over the place. You have these really vibrant colors, and then you have everything like sleek and modern, and then you have the shabby chic, and it was all over the place. It's really hard to nail down. And I've spoken to other decorators and designers, and they're like, I did a 90s one. It was hard because you try to pull a little bit from the 80s, but the 80s is so like different, really, when you start to look that the 90s was just this collaboration of so many different styles. It's like, it's not good. The 90s were not good. I don't know. But period films are fantastic. And the amount of research you have to do, I always love the research.
Yeah, me too.
Yeah.
Me too. Yeah.
And then, so let me get back to the Conspirator for 1 second.
Yes.
So how much did you build versus, because you were talking about the locations, did you have a lot of build? Did you build the courtroom?
Yes, the courtroom we built into in an abandoned car dealership. It had like, oh my God, it only had 20 something 1 foot ceilings. It was it was not good. But yes, that's where we built it. Yes, and then we built that. We built a theater where he gets shot, and that was really. Wow. Yeah, because you can't. I mean, the Ford Theater is very specific because the lodge where the balconies where he sat is actually on the stage. It's not off the stage.
Right.
It's very unique design. So we actually we did go to the Ford Theater. We even sat. We even they let us because it's Redford. They let us inside the lodge itself. You know, the box, and you are on the stage and you see it. And so I pitched him the idea. I showed him how we can just build that side of the theater, the stage, and then create a small portion of balcony that we can move around and create a sense that there's more of it. Mm-hmm. And it worked because once we kind of figured out how we're going to do it, and this is where storyboarding ties into my career as a designer, is that I always think as the camera, and I can always design for camera, and I don't need to design more than what the camera can see or should see or needs to see. And we can agree on that. Obviously, it's a negotiation, but the truth of it is you don't have to build 360 all the time. You don't have to build, and that was a perfect example. So we built that, the courtroom, and then we built within locations. So like the prison cells were built, and there was the prison cells. Some of them were sets. Some of them were built within the fort, within the location. And I'm trying to think now what else. The houses were all locations, I mean, fully renovated, a lot of them, but doesn't matter. And then some of them were just period appropriate, like historical, basically, that we went in and shot in. I mean, you did a lot of exterior work. You covered the streets with mulch, you know, etc. You have to constantly hide cable and etc. But
that fort that's surrounded by the moat and everything. What a perfect location. I mean,
wonderful location. Yes, wonderful location. There was actually a better one, but then they couldn't make a deal with us. Something went really wrong with them, so we ended up in this one. I mean, Savannah has 2 forts. You know, you even had choices of forts. You had this one or that one. Yeah, because the original, because this photographs from the hanging, and it's not round, it's straight. So I wanted the straight angles. But that's the other one that couldn't make a deal with us for whatever reason, and so we ended up at this one, and you know, you give up okay, so it's round, whatever, shoot me. What can I say?
Hey.
But we made it look very, very close, and we built the scaffolding period appropriate with the period nails. You know, and that's very important because when you're that close to it, you got to have the period nails. So there was a lot of stuff like that in those buildings. We built the buildings there in the middle of the field. We added those because that's where the horses were and where people had lunch and stuff like that. So those structures were actually sets. So there was a lot of building within the locations, but there was also straightforward sets. But we never had a real stage because Savannah doesn't really have real stages. But it does have tremendous amount of beautiful period preserved.
Yes, the architecture there is phenomenal.
City. Beautiful city.
Now, I should say your website has some sketches on it from most of your work. And you were saying you started from your beginning, just being able to draw and express that, I always think is so helpful. As a decorator, when I see a sketch from a designer, you know, because it could be completely different from what we scouted. And if someone's able to sketch it and visually give it to me and anyone else and just be clear of what's going on here, it's really helpful to everyone to be on the same page. So being able to storyboard, I mean, you must just like, here it is. Here's your shot. Here you're like, let me give it to you. You're done.
Well, I mean, I think I fell into storyboarding is because I needed to break into film, but since I was theater trained. But in theater, in the part of the training in theater is you do a lot of sketching. You do a lot of actually, believe it or not, you do a lot of sketching for lighting, for light moods and stuff like that. And then when you're doing an opera, you're sketching each act and each scene is different. So that's kind of like lends itself. You can see the progression of doing these little scenes, how that leads you to storyboarding. And then storyboarding let me, from Silence of the Lambs, Jonathan loved my work so much that he recommended me for my first production design job. And then I never looked back.
Right.
but the sketching has always been there and I am always mystified. I thought it, by the way, I thought everybody sketched. I was
So did I.
I was mystified to find out that people don't.
Right.
And I was like, well, how do you communicate? I was just literally mystified by that. But you have to accept the fact that everybody comes with different backgrounds and different methods. And as long as they get their idea across, they get an idea across. Being a stage designer, being trained as a stage designer is also a little bit like you are a little bit of a control freak. So in order to control things, you better spell them out on the page, right? So the drawings are meant to also tell people, that's what I'm seeing. This is what I would like. Otherwise you may end up with something that is like, okay, that's your interpretation of it, but that's not what I was after. And it's not fair to put your decorator or your art director or anybody else that's collaborating with you in that position. And again, as an artist, you should be open to everybody's input, but you also want them to march in the direction you are marching in, or you've set the course.
Yeah.
And so the sketches for me, they're number one, they're important to me because I need to figure out the design. So when I sketch, I'm designing and I figure it out as I'm working. Then I present to the director. That's a great tool to present and talk, and it's not as time consuming as model making. We'll always get to a model when we're sure that is the design. And then they serve, I literally put lamps and key furniture pieces in my sketches because I have a feel for where I would like this to go. And I always give a lot of, now particularly I give a lot of digital presentations to my folks. I give a full-on books of like, here's the style, that I'm going for. That includes lamps and furniture, key pieces, not overwhelming people, but like literally this is the direction, this is the color palette, this is the direction. I just think it's important, and that's how you can succeed, and that's how you can work with different decorators and still get your vision, even though these are different people. And I feel it's a very big part of the designer job. And the other thing that I do is I also design my own ground plans. So the original ground plans come from me because, again, that is so important because that's determining the mise en scène, how the camera is going to move, how the actors are going to move, where the entrances, where the exits, what is the flow to the scene. That comes from theater, but then also comes from the storyboarding because it's really important to understand. That's great that you designed the most beautiful set, but if it's unshootable, nobody's going to see it, And so how to incorporate the camera work and to help yourself so the set is seen and it really comes alive for the director, for the camera person, for the actors. That's where the ground plan comes in. And I really, to this day, I do my ground plans.
And also, you're in so many more meetings and so many more discussions than with the set decorator, that you have an idea of like, this is the focus over here. So you don't have to, decorate the world. Here's our focus and what we're really zooming in on, and being able to convey that through drawings or the ground plans. It's enormously helpful. Like, and even for budget, really, because you don't want to waste money.
Yes, and it gets everybody excited. I mean, the reality is...
seeing drawings, it does have excitement. Yeah.
It gets everyone, and you get... And a lot of it has to do... you're also trying to get the producers to support you and get them excited. And if they see it, then that's why you're asking for this money. You just need to defend. You need to explain and defend every decision you're making. Well, that's a very easy way to say, this is what I'm thinking. This is what I think will really look great. And I just find it also, it's just fun for me, but it is my process, it really is. And now these very elaborate presentations I know people are always stunned that I do my own presentations, that I don't give them to graphics or anything like that. But I am adamant about it because, again, that's a design process. It is, when I do these presentations, a lot of the textures and a lot of the colors and a lot of the ideas in them. And I myself have to go back to it so that I don't forget something, because I was like, oh, that's what I was thinking. Yeah. Because, there's so many, particularly with television, it's like doing 100 yards sprint forever.
Every day and not seeing the finish line.
Exactly. When the finish line, you're just in the 100 yards forever. Yeah. Like
100 yards. I didn't even make it. No medal.
Yeah, yeah, it is, and it inevitably comes a moment where you forget you thought of something, and if you don't have a visual reference even for yourself, you can go back and go look. Oh my God, that's what I was going to do.
Yeah. Now, did you, like, on something like Smash, were you able to keep up with the pace of, like, were you drawing a lot for that? I could assume it's like a dream to work on. I loved that show, and I would have died to have worked on it. I just think it's so creative and so much fun. Oh my God.
Well, I did season 2.
Right.
I did not do season 1. I did season 2, and I was specifically asked to come on board. I had heard it was season 1 was very tumultuous, so I was very apprehensive because television is not necessarily my comfort zone. It's not in my comfort zone, and particularly network television, which has a very different pace than HBO.
It's not HBO.
And right, and so I was very apprehensive about doing Smash season 2. I was very apprehensive about going into a season 2 where the look is already set, and and the designer did a very good job under very, very, very difficult circumstances. And the show had a lot of drama around it, and I was just really, really apprehensive, and I was talked into it because I was asked to make the numbers bigger, better. I was promised more money for the numbers, and to make them look like Broadway numbers. So I said, okay, that sounds good.
Yeah.
So be careful what you wish for.
Yeah, give me more time. Give me more time.
I think that show tried to kill me. I think it was determined to kill me. It was really, really difficult. It was really challenging to make large-scale musical numbers on a television schedule and 9-day shooting schedule. Crazy. So that was difficult. What I inherited was a process of where none of the people making the music numbers were coming together to meetings early enough. So that's the one thing I really pushed for, put my foot down and said, no, we need to sit down with the composer, the lyricist, the choreographer, the lighting designer, because there was a theater lighting designer. They're all Broadway people, and me with the concepts. And first I would do the sketches, concepts, and then I would go to model. In that show, I had 4 model makers, and we would make full-on color models because there was no other way we had 12 producers that were all in LA, and we were in New York, that needed to approve everything. And no other way to do it. You can't do it on black and white sketch. Too much explaining, right? And so it's like, because I had worked in theater, that's what you do. You do color models. So we did color models. But the key to it was that we would sit early enough and say, all right, what do you need? This is what I'm thinking. Here's the set. And they would say, oh, and the choreographer would say, I really would love to have a staircase here that goes to the airplane so I can twirl it around. It needs to be blah, 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 blah. And they'll give you all these things that they need. And you can embed them, and you can plan for them, and you can do them. And then you'd go like, how about you want to play with the luggage? Yes. Okay. Does it need to be on rollers? Does it need to be this? What does it need to do? And I remember, like, I would do a full-on model, and they go like, we changed our mind. We're not doing that anymore. And you'd be like, I can kill you now, but sure. You know, and sometimes what I did also to force the conversations, here's something I'm very kind of have learned, is I would just make a presentation. I would come up with a theme. I remember for one, I just said, like, let's do, because I would go and ask, is there a theme for this?
Because no one's giving you answers. So at a certain point,
no one's giving me an answer.
You got to do it. It's going to shoot, and you got to do it.
Right. And I got to have something, right?
Yeah.
So rather than, throw my hands up in the air, I would go and I would come up with themes. And so I remember one, I said, like, how about we have a catwalk and clocks, and we inside of a clock and all the gears and blah, blah, blah. And they would go, no, but we could do a fashion show. I'm like, bingo, done, fashion show. Right. And so I've learned this from storyboarding, because in storyboarding, what you're doing is you're proposing shot ideas. And in the director will say, that's not what I had in mind. I actually had in mind this, and bingo, you answer what they had in mind. But if you ask them, what do you see? Sometimes they won't answer. It will show me what you can do. You get like, right. Okay. Well,
it's a very different question.
So you learn. So what I was doing on that show was constantly, I remember I came up with, I said, like, why don't we do a Moulin Rouge number? Let's do, let's do Didi Maupassant, and let's have Toulouse-Lautrec. Why don't we call it the Toulouse-Lautrec musical? And he's like, no, but we can do this. And that's kind of how you were just trying to force people into like some kind of an idea for, this was when we were searching for there was one musical that was, we see Sean's characters comes in and we was, and it was just one number. It was very comedic, but it was a rival Broadway musical. And it was like, well, what is that musical? What is it about?
Right.
So how am I going to design it if I don't know what it's about? You see, and part of it is like, I need a book to it. I need a theme. You have to give me the whole book.
Isn't that incredible? Isn't it incredible sometimes that no one has thought of these things? Isn't it incredible?
I mean, I just feel like,
especially in TV.
I don't know. I mean, I in order for me to be successful in terms of my designs, I need time, and in order for that time, I need a decision, right? So what I have learned is try to find different ways to get to people to articulate, to get them to make a decision.
Right.
And Smash, as I said, what was so complicated about it, that it had so many people involved, more than any other show I've ever been on. And I think that that's one of the hardest things about television. It's when you have, particularly with network, but when you have like an HBO situation, the difference between cable and network is that within cable, it's more the showrunner's job. They let them run. It's their show. Right. So that's kind of closer to film, where you have a director and that's one person, one vision. Great. Okay. We don't have this 12 people need to say to approve every musical number.
Right. But that's too many cooks.
But it prepared me for Lovecraft Country, for our musical number. because I literally forced everyone to meet 6 weeks before the musical number and say, here's what I'm doing. This is what I'm proposing.
Yeah, you knew better.
I need to hear from the choreographer. Are you okay with this? I'm giving you a staircase because that's always good for choreography. What else do you need? I'm giving you this for lighting. I'm giving it blah, 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 blah. Like just literally trying to get people to really live in that environment, because then I can tape it on the stage and they can rehearse and we can give them dummy steps and they can do the number. And then everybody shines on the day of shooting, because you have one day of shooting in the meantime.
Right. And you've allowed them to prep for this and given people time to prep for this. And that's invaluable.
I think that's the key. If you want to know why Lovecraft Country looked good, is because I would start the concepts and the ideas months ahead. I was designing the planets in May. They didn't shoot till late October, November. I was just like, no, I'm going to crack this. I was like, literally, I had to crack this stuff. And I was on the plane to Chicago when I was drawing the planets and drawing the crazy branches, and kind of came up with the idea, oh, I want to see these branches, and they have little craters. And it's kind of like my idea of the little prince, who goes from planet to planet.
Yeah.
So you draw upon a lot of influences and things. And ironically, I know people, because I've done, like, there was a whole class in San Diego. I think they studied Lovecraft Country. They spent a semester. So I gave a master class.
Oh, that's amazing.
I know. And then another class asked me, and they all think that I've done a lot of horror or that I've read a lot of horror. And I just go like, this will shock you. I've never read H.P. Lovecraft. I kind of know who he is, but I had to research him. But I said, I've done only one movie in the horror genre, and that is the remake of Poltergeist, but that's a ghost story.
Yeah. And
I did it so that I can get experience with green screen and inverted hallways and special effects and visual effects, and it was I needed to have that in my portfolio. But I don't do horror. It's not in my vocabulary. It's not something that, it's not a world that I live comfortably in.
Yeah.
Because it scares me. Because I actually don't watch it because it scares the bejesus out of me, and I find no pleasure in that.
Yeah, I'm with you. But it's weird. Lovecraft, I know it's a horror, but I wouldn't tell someone it was. I don't know what horror. I would say it was, but it's awesome.
It's really, and this is why I said, like, I didn't design it for horror. I designed it for the characters. The real horror of the people and what they have to do, how they have to survive as Black people in white America.
That's the horror
real
story.
horror.
That's the real,
That's what the show is about. You know, the rest of it is metaphors, you know, the horror side of it, but it's more science fiction and more fantasy. It's more fantasy to me. It was, you know, I called it Harry Potter for adults, basically. Magic and villains. And, you know, but I can design for that, and that's how I was designing. But you know, I know those kids. They're like, and did you see? Like, they would ask me, Evil Dead, and I said, no, I've never seen Evil Dead, and I don't mean anything against it. I've just literally never seen it. It's just not. I'm a very scaredy cat, and horror deeply upsets me. Violence upsets me.
Yeah. Now, you were talking about Smash and having to have so many people and so many people on set and like these big numbers and everything, but you've also done like Grey Gardens where it's just 2 people on screen basically the whole time.
Well, the third character in that is on sets.
Well, the house.
How can you not do Grey Gardens? That was really.
I could talk to you about Grey Gardens for like 2 hours. I mean, were you a fan of the document or had you? Yeah. Okay. Well, then you're in. Huge fan of the documentary. I remember I went with my husband to see it at Film Forum. I even remember the day we saw it and where we saw it. And I just remember going like, mind blowing. This documentary just blew my mind. Such an interesting story. And then when I heard about the project that was coming, again, that's another one I really, really chased. I just went like, I have to do this. I have such a good insight into these women. I got to do this. And I met Michael Susi, and we just really, really hit it off. And it was ironic because somebody else was supposed to do it. It was one of those projects that was just kicking around for a couple of years, kind of like Little Miss Sunshine. Somebody else was supposed to do it. Mm-hmm. And then by the time the project finally financially happened, the designer wasn't available. So a lot of your career is based on just the timing.
You know,
available,
timing.
not available. Yeah, I know.
How do you control that? No one can control that. That's just dumb luck, you know. And so, but we really hit it off, and it was done in Toronto. And we built the facade on an abandoned ground at the Toronto Zoo because it looked wild. It was great. It looked wild, and it had that fence actually that was so good. So we built 2/3 of the facade. We built like the front, the side, one side, and a little bit of the other side. Not even a full, not a full 360 facade. We didn't need it. The porch was very important, and then the rest of the rooms were on stage. And it was a 2-story set. Actually, you did go physically up the stairs and went upstairs to the yellow room. It was very important to Michael, and I agree with that because there was a lot of shots going up and down the stairs.
Yeah,
and you couldn't really.
And dancing.
It would have. He didn't want to break the camera, and that's fine. And the challenge of that show was having to age it every 4 days. Every room, every exterior, interior, every single room. Every single piece of it, every 4 days needed to be aged. So you start pristine, and you're aging, and you're aging, and you're aging till you get to the very decrepit look. I know. And it was such a scheduling puzzle. And so when they would shoot at the facade on location, we would be aging the stage, etc. So it was constantly hopping. And it was a very complex show. I happen to have one of the best art directors on the planet on that show. And I really could not have done it without his help, because the technical figuring out of the whole schedule was such a part of how we were going to accomplish things. And then with aging, trying not to get too theatrical and go too far deep into it was just really hard. And then
Brant Gordon.
Yeah, and you aging also the set dressing. I mean, you aging everything.
Right.
It's not just the walls, it's the set dressing, everything. So it was really interesting, and you knew you were going to recreate the yellow room, but the rest of the house, we had the ground plans for it, but there are no really great records of what it truly looked like in the 20s.
That purple in the living room is to die for. And then the drapery against it's chilling. I love it. I love it.
Purple was an accident.
That purple's awesome.
That purple was a happy accident. That's another thing I really believe in happy accidents, because you're going on the show. I had ordered, and this was so interesting. I had ordered wallpaper from Secondhand Rose, which was a big period wallpaper source. Yes. And it arrived, and you're looking at a tiny sample. We're in Toronto, they're in New York. You're looking at a sample this big on your screen. It arrives, and oh my God, it has a stripe in it. Something we thought was an edge to the wallpaper turned out to be a stripe in it. We thought that was the edge that you cut.
Right.
So they put a couple of rolls. They called me downstairs. It was kind of purplish in the tone, but it had flowers in it. And now it had a stripe, and it was too much with the drapes, with the whole thing. And they call me and they go, you got to come down. And I just go and I flip out. I just said, it looks like pajamas. And I was just horrified. I was like, we cannot have this in this movie. And so I called the director and I go, I gotta strip it. And he goes, are you sure you can't make it work? I'm like, I am not having striped pajamas in this movie. I'm not. No, the flowers was already a thing. Now we got to get the stripe in it. It's too much going on. It was overwhelming. And it's like, I don't want the set to become it's not a musical, for God's sakes. It's not just supposed to overwhelm you, right?
Yes.
And I just go, I love this deep tone. And my scenic says, how about you pick a tone? And I've got this technique where I can create depth to it. And he made me a sample. I picked the purple. And I said to Michael, with these drapes in that yellow room, some yellow room, because I wanted to connect to the yellow, I said, purple is the perfect complement. Let's go for it. She's a queen. She's royal. Right. Let's go for it. And it was so beautiful. And it calmed the set. And now I'm thinking, how much better this is than my wallpaper. A stripe in it. But it happened in the 11th hour. And it was it was traumatic.
Yeah.
But no, I wasn't going to have pajamas.
That happens to me at least weekly, I feel like. I just go through something of like, oh, that didn't work out. What is next? Oh, I should have thought of that first.
Yeah, I know. But you know what? Now I ask, even with my decorator on the last show, because particularly when you're doing sets that are like this, where so much of the action takes place in there, every couch, everything starts mattering a lot because you're seeing it a lot. Yeah. So it's literally important. So now I'm like, I know you love this couch, but do me a favor, get at least 2 more options. Because it's really hard to tell scale from a photograph.
Oh my gosh. I say it all the time. Hard. I say it all the time. People have to, I ask, some of my buyers take pictures of them sitting in the chair, especially for like conference chairs and everything, to see where the head lands. Like it's, I thought that was much bigger. Okay. Got it.
It's so, well, we after you have couches that cannot get in an elevator, you learn to measure the elevator.
Right.
After you have couches that come out and they look like like for little people and kids, like looks like a kid's room couch, you learn that, somebody should sit in it. And then you learn, you know what? Instead of having to go one at a time, how about we so now I insist at least on 2 couches. 3. If
that's where you start. The sofa's where you start for me.
Let's start with 2 options, and I would now, and I really had she had a really long one. She says no, they can. And I said the room is very small. I think I like this one, the boxier one. I said, do me a favor, I'll poster both of them. We'll put them in the set. I'll go with what you think is really great, but I'm telling you, this is going to be the one because I think we need slightly smaller and boxier. Right. And sure enough, that ended up playing better. But you don't know. I also want to give her the freedom to experiment and see if it will work, if her instinct will work. But I'm not settling for one choice. I'm just like, no, it's like with lamps. Gotta have multiples.
Oh, yeah.
And gotta have
Always.
Yeah.
And
so now, but the key to it also is to tell people, if you see something that's going the wrong direction, stop, call me, let me come and see it. Don't wallpaper the entire room.
Right.
See if your instinct says something's wrong, then don't, and they would, the smart people, they put 2 rolls up and went, I'm not sure she's going to like this, and when they called me, I was like, okay.
Well, they knew you, and it's also knowing you and getting keying into knowing you.
No, they didn't know me. They just were smart people.
Oh.
No, Toronto, it's a whole new team. Actually, my first time in Canada. Yeah, I've done a lot in Canada since then. But you know what? It just empower people. Tell them. Yeah. It's really important to let them know and be available. And I always tell people, text me, call me. I don't care. You're not bothering me. I'd rather be there and solve the problem than have a full-on wallpaper room, and then what?
Yeah.
Then we're stripping it. It's better to do this. So anyway, but yeah, Grey Gardens was full of happy accidents, and I worked so hard on that.
And so many greens. I mean, greens take a huge amount,
so
like into the.
greens.
I mean, you had trees growing into the bedroom and the overgrowth of the exterior.
Huge character in the show. Huge greens show, and young greens and old greens and this greens and and the greens changed every 4 days. Yes, it was massive.
So when you took it from, you started new. You started like in the 30s.
Correct.
And then you took it down, but then you had to go. It actually has 3 looks because then they refresh it or whatever. So you have, the 3 looks.
It actually has 4 looks. Yes, because they bring it back. Mm-hmm, right. They clean it up.
Right. You're right. So is that in order? Ish?
No, I'm pretty sure we shot that before we shot the last look.
Oh wow.
No, I wanted you to shoot the really decayed look last, and the reason, particularly for the facade, is because at the end we dropped the crane on it to break the roof.
The roof. Wow.
So, so you couldn't go back, and then the rest of it, I think, very much I said like, no, we got to go in order of aging, even if it's not the order of storytelling in that particular instance.
You have to. I mean,
you have to, because that's the best way, because then it's consistently aged.
And plus for the actors, I would think, and the director, like how you just like the flow of the story, even though it's flashback and here and there, but just to keep the continuity for them of what's going on in this world. It's I've seen it so many times, and there was a play that came to LA a couple of years ago of it that I saw. It was a
musical.
Yeah.
A play or a musical? The musical.
I think it was a musical, and it was
the musical.
I would die. I was like front row. I loved it. It's such a great project, and it never gets old to me. Like, it's just so fascinating, the story of it and how you let that go and your mind.
They went to they went to a mental place, and they had a total codependency. I mean, it's a very interesting story, and also both of them do such a good job in it.
Phenomenal.
Both of them. And Drew, it's the best thing Drew Barrymore has ever done.
I absolutely agree with you.
One expects Jessica Lange excellence, but Drew Barrymore shines in that. Absolutely shines in the movie.
Are you watching anything now that you're really jealous that you're not working on?
I don't.
I get jealous. I get very jealous.
I don't get into that headspace at all.
I get really jealous.
I don't think. I mean, maybe when I was younger I would, but now I don't, because there's no. There's no point to it. I'm working on my personal growth as a designer. Is what I'm working on, and trying to really self-challenge. I am doing a couple of things. I am starting very early at the beginning of another movie with George Clooney, and we're in exploratory stages of trying to figure out where to shoot this. And then I'm doing actually something I've never done, but I'm very curious about, which is I'm going to create actual clubs and spaces and markets in a building in downtown Reading, PA.
Awesome.
Yeah, it's a permanent sets, basically.
Wow.
And that's fascinating, because that would be permanent. That nobody's going to take it to a trash and throw it out.
I know.
So I'm doing a speakeasy and a smoking lounge and a market and a big club / brewery type of thing. So
fascinating.
That fascinates me, because that's kind of like, okay, this is like my personal private playground.
Yeah.
and for the public.
A speakeasy and everything. I mean, it sounds like it's even creative. Exactly. It's not even anything boring.
Correct. No. But that's why I'm doing that, because it's not even. Yes, exactly. And so that's what I'm doing right now. And so. What am I watching? I'm watching different type of shows. I watch a lot of movies. We've been on a kick. My husband and I we have a huge DVD library, a Blu-ray. He will correct me and say Blu-ray. And we're now on a kick of where we're doing spaghetti westerns.
Oh.
I gave him a really beautiful book on spaghetti westerns, on the design and the makeup and the making of them. For his birthday. And so we started watching a lot of Italian movies, not just the Sergio Leone, but other ones, the less known ones. And it's really fun, and it's really interesting to see Europeans doing American Western towns, and which is actually more interesting and more beautiful, believe it or not, because they're taking their slight take on it is very, very beautiful. So that's kind of fascinating to look at somebody interpreting a different culture, all dubbed. all dubbed. But anyway, that's what we're doing at the moment. That's what I'm doing.
Oh, that's a fun one. That's a fun genre. I've never really gotten into that genre. I should check it out. I've never.
Oh, it's fascinating. We go through this, like we were on for a while. I love film noir. That's my favorite genre. If I ever want to, like, he would go like, "What do you want to watch tonight?" I would go like, "Oh, I want to watch a film noir."
Yeah.
So I love film noir and I love Hitchcock, so I can always go fall back on that. Or Fellini, that's kind of like my. What do you want to watch tonight? Let's go do that. But we go sometimes through themes like this, and we just did a whole bunch of French movies from the 50s directed by Clouzot, who does kind of French film noir. Yeah. So we would just go into this. Like we'd get in the mood and we'll just like, and he loves samurai movies, so sometimes we'll watch samurai movies.
And then it creeps into your head and it influences. I always think that, I
think that particularly, yes, because particularly when I was doing the Korean part, the first thing that came to my mind, because it's about a demon, I was like, oh, Kurosawa, I gotta go back revisit Kurosawa. I gotta look at those demon stories, etc. So, I would say that love for film and watching a lot of film is really, being a cinephile is an important part of being a designer too.
Yeah.
Having a general.
Because you see what works and what didn't.
Well, and it can draw upon different kind of influences, not just what's in front of you at the moment,
Yeah. I'm constantly watching anything that's on just to check out design and just to see like, oh, how did they do that? And God, I would have never done that. And God, that's awesome. And how did they get that done? And it's just such appreciation for all of our work because I know how hard it is.
Yeah. And I just want to, before we go, I want to plug one thing. I am a co-founder of the Production Designers Collective with production designer Inbal Weinberg. Mm-hmm. And the whole mission, we have over 700 members now. We're digital, we're free, and we invite people from all over the world. So we're global. And we have a lot of sort of Zoom sessions now because of COVID. And then we publish a magazine every 2 months, on different topics for designers, and we interview different designers. But the whole idea is to bring people together and make kind of a collaborative society of designers in a sense, and exchange ideas, a space to exchange ideas. So that's our mission, that's our goal. We're less about competitiveness and more about dialogue and a collective. Literally what we meant by it, the Production Designers Collective.
And is that the name of the website also?
Yes, that's the website.
Designerscollective.com.
Production Designers Collective.
ProductionDesignersCollective.com. Well, I'm going to go on it right now and check you out.
Yes. No, but that's something I'm very proud, and it's been our project for we've been doing it for the last six years, and I've met a lot of production designers that way.
That's so great, because camaraderie and being in it together and
a dialogue and exchange of ideas, and that's kind of like why I don't like to get into a competitive headspace. It's not worth it. No. I'm much more about like, let's all come together and help each other versus the opposite.
No, well, I can't thank you enough for even talking to me, because I've enjoyed your work for a very long time. And then just revisiting this whole Lovecraft Country is just such an enormous project that I really bravo for giving that to us visually, because it's a gift, because it's gorgeous and it's really fantastic. So thank you for that, and your time. So thank you.
Thank you. I'm very, very proud of the show. I really wanted to do it. I always had a smile on my face every day. And I remember telling Misha, I said, like, if this ends up being the last thing I've ever done, I am blissfully happy. Yeah. And she just winked at me and said, it's not going to be the last.
No, it's not. Sorry. You still got to go to work. Sorry.
It is. I am good. I've done something that I really feel it's like, okay, this is something truly, truly beyond special.
It's really great. Really great to be proud of that. I want to... So I really held back on those great garden questions because I had like 20 more. I mean, the wallpaper selection and, I mean, that's such a great story, but choosing those colors and, I don't know. It's just a fantastic, interesting story to me, basically about hoarders, you know what I mean? But how these two women could be just living in their own filth for that long, and to show that and how sad it was, and to really get the layers of the years. I mean, that's like 40 years they were there. It's crazy. It's just such a spectacular job. And you can hear in her voice, she really has a passion for this job. And it's my first time talking to her. I sometimes feel that that's better when I interview people because I don't know what they're going to say. I kind of know what my friends or colleagues are going to say in some sense, but I don't research like and read other interviews that people have done. I just watch their work. It's probably not the right way to do an interview because I could probably, I don't know. Anyway, I need an interviewing course probably, but I watch people's work and then I want to talk about it. And that's what this is. But I'm super thankful that she was able to give me some time, and I really hope you consider Lovecraft Country because I definitely am. Now that I've really watched it, it's a lot. That's a lot of work. A lot of people sweated over those sets, I gotta say. So yeah, I hope you got an earful. I'm Kim Wanup for Decorating Pages. Splash away on your Stogie Floaty luxury pool float. Available now at Etsy and stogiefloaty.com.
Welcome to Pro Tips for the Pros, brought to you by Floor & Decor Bailey's Crossroads. In this series, we'll explore essential advice for professional contractors to deliver outstanding renovation results. Let's dive in. Keep the work area clean and organized throughout the renovation process to create a positive impression and minimize stress for the customer. Regularly clean up debris and dust to maintain a safe and comfortable living environment. Thank you for joining us for this pro tip on planning thorough renovations. Stay tuned for more expert advice brought to you by Floor & Decor Bailey's Crossroads.
A lot of people tolerate ordinary. Ordinary bathrooms, kitchens, entryways. Well, not on your watch. If you're a pro, you've got a new partner in town. Floor & Decor. From tile to wood to stone, Floor & Decor has more styles and job lot quantities of Schluter, Mapei, Laticrete, and other brands pros trust. Come see a whole new way to wow with Floor & Decor. Coming soon to Bailey's Crossroads.